Okay, welcome back to day 2 in this flat, and as I said, I'm going to try and make a video every single day, so here is the next one. Today's video is going to be my first vegan in Guatemala series video, because I've now finished my journey in Mexico for the time being. So the next few videos will focus on Guatemala and what it's like to travel in Guatemala as a vegan and how I like to travel. In Guatemala I also started to do some more solo travel, so there's a lot more solo travel adventures as well. I'm going to preface this video by saying that I'm going to freely and openly discuss my opinion of sort of how travel has changed. In Guatemala, especially in Lake Atitlán, I saw some things that are going to sound a little bit negative. It might not resonate with everybody, but it's just my opinion. Having traveled a lot throughout different continents, I saw some stuff in Guatemala that I'm seeing creeping into travel in general, I think aided by social media. And I'd like to touch on that today, and hopefully you'll see what I mean. So we're gonna start in Lake Atitlán. So I took a bus from San Cristobal de las Casas in Mexico, which is in the Chiapas region, a bus all the way to Panajachel. Panajachel is a town on the edge of Lake Atitlán. Atitlán, sorry, I kept pronouncing it wrong as I was traveling as well, but it's pronounced Lake Atitlán because of the accent on the A. And Panajachel is basically the main town. It's the most touristy of all the towns as well. But the way Lake Atitlán is arranged is there's the lake and there's 11 towns around the outside, 11 sort of main towns. And you can hop between the towns with a boat that goes across the lake. And I visited 4 of those towns altogether. And they all have their kind of own characteristics. So Panajachel is the main one, so most of the buses they go from and to Panajachel. It's the biggest one, and it has a lot of tourist sort of shops and souvenir shops and things like that. So there's not too much to do in Panajachel, except there is a nature reserve in Panajachel, which is amazing. I did go there for a day trip. If you want to just spend some time in nature, it's a really good place to go to. I was hiking in this nature reserve by myself. They have a butterfly house as well, so I was looking at the butterflies. They have very impressive, what are they called? Blue morphos. So huge blue morpho butterflies, which are just all around you. And they also show you the cocoon stage of the butterfly life cycle as well. So I love butterfly houses. I do wonder how vegan it is, I suppose, because as a vegan, I don't like the use of animals for entertainment or food or clothing. Butterfly houses don't seem to cause harm to the butterflies, and therefore I don't think they're such a huge problem. I was walking through the Panajachel Nature Reserve and met a guy called Jeremy, an American guy who happened to be a wildlife biologist, so perfect companion for a hike, right? So we saw a coral snake and lots of other butterflies and monkeys. Really gorgeous little hike in Panajachel, so I would recommend that particular spot. After Panajachel, we took a boat to San Pedro La Laguna. San Pedro is another town on the edge of Lake Atitlán, and San Pedro, its characteristic is kind of the party town. So when we arrived, actually it was me, Q, and a friend of ours that we met on a bus on the way to Guatemala called Alex. Again, shout out to Alex, amazing guy. And the 3 of us ended up going to San Pedro together and doing the sunrise hike called the Indian Nose hike from San Pedro. So we got up really early in the morning and walked all the way to the top of this mountain, I guess. Really gorgeous. I would highly recommend doing that sunrise hike, sorry. Okay, so here's where my first sort of gripe is with travel and tourism. When we arrived in San Pedro, because it's kind of the party town, there was a lot of techno music kind of blaring, and Lake Atitlán is this gorgeous, peaceful lake, very beautiful and tranquil. And then techno music blaring in this town while we're eating and trying to enjoy this view of Lake Atitlán. And so there was just a pattern that I noticed where Westerners would come into places and start sort of bringing their own stuff to other countries. So for example, techno is not very Guatemalan, and there were people just playing techno music at Lake Atitlán and partying, and you know, and I like partying, but at the same time I think there's a time and a place, and San Pedro seems to have been taken over by Westerners. I'll talk a little bit more about this later on with another town where a whole different situation has occurred, but in the same vein. I thought this was a bit of a juxtaposition, this amazing lake and then techno music. I felt like it just didn't go. But it wasn't a huge deal, so I kind of was like, okay, it's fine. You know, this is the characteristic of this particular town. Bear in mind, these characteristics or personalities of these towns are also there because tourists have brought them there. So San Pedro wasn't the the party town until tourists kind of made it the party town. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. It made me a little bit uncomfortable. Whether it's warranted or not, I'm not sure. Apart from that, San Pedro was really cool, and the roads were really windy and very steep and coming up and down. And so after San Pedro, we went to another small town around the lake. So we took a bus, we took a boat from San Pedro La Laguna to Santa Cruz. And Santa Cruz is another one of these 11 towns around the lake. Very, very small. This one was very, very small. And Alex and I shared an Airbnb here with an amazing view of the lake. This was incredible. It was just right outside the window. We woke up to this wonderful view of the lake. And it was a very tranquil town, so we just walked around and sort of just mingled with the locals and talked to them and in broken Spanish. The fourth town that I visited around Lake Atitlán was called San Marcos, and some people love San Marcos. San Marcos seems to split people because San Marcos is the spiritual town, so the personality of the town is that it has this spiritual vibe. It's where people go for yoga and for meditation and that sort of thing. Now, while there's nothing wrong with yoga and meditation, I love both and they're such good practices. Yoga is an ancient Indian practice, and the only reason that it's there around the lake in Guatemala is because Westerners have brought it there. And I actually met up with a Guatemalan guy who's taken plenty of trips to Lake Atitlán, called Billy. Shout out to Billy. And I met him through couch surfing in Antigua, and I talked to Billy about San Marcos and whether or not he thought it was a good idea to have these yoga centers in Guatemala. And he said, yoga, of course, yoga is wonderful. Yoga is a fantastic practice. I recommend it to everybody. It's amazing. However, Billy was saying that these yoga centers in San Marcos are not accessible to Guatemalans because they're too expensive. I met another girl who had gone to these yoga centers in San Marcos in Guatemala, and she agreed this is a very commercial Western version of spirituality. Spirituality, especially this sort of spirituality, is from the East, but Westerners have kind of brought it to Lake Atitlán or brought it to Guatemala, almost changed it. I mean, if I'm going to be 100% honest, I think yoga has been absolutely bastardized by Westerners in some places. And Lake Atitlán might be one of those places because it's highly commercial. Commercialization of something that's spiritual is a typically Western thing to do. You know, spirituality isn't supposed to be commercial. Spirituality is anything but commercial. It's kind of the opposite. There's a place in San Marcos that's particularly famous for yoga. I didn't go there. It just made me feel really weird being in Guatemala and there being this expensive yoga center right there. I got a wax in Guatemala in Lake Atitlán. I was talking to my waxing lady about this, and she also said that yes, it's great, tourists bring in money, but she didn't think it was worth losing Guatemalan culture in favor of kind of this new Western spiritual thing. So it was I have mixed feelings about Lake Atitlán. The lake itself is incredible. The Guatemalans I met were amazing, really friendly, awesome people. But I didn't feel like I could travel how I normally travel there because it's been completely taken over by Westerners who have brought their own versions of whatever they enjoy to a place that is in Guatemala. In San Pedro, I did go out. I went to see a Guatemalan band play in one of the bars. So I tried to kind of keep things as local as possible, even in places like this, but it's becoming increasingly difficult. Yeah, unfortunately mixed feelings about Lake Atitlán. Like I said, the lake is wonderful, the people have been wonderful, but what ruined it for me was the tourism. The tourists, the ones who kind of come in and try to make things, build things there for themselves without any regard for the locals who live there. I met a lot of digital nomads as I was traveling around. It seems to be the digital nomads who buy up property, turn it into something that they want. For example, yoga centers or co-living spaces, co-working spaces, cafes that are very overpriced for locals, restaurants that are overpriced for locals. And what you end up with is this divide in these areas with places that outprice locals, which are exclusively for travelers and not even backpackers, they're for digital nomads or expats. So this video is supposed to highlight some issues. So even though I want to talk about travel, Lake Atitlán, unfortunately, it didn't feel like travel to me. It didn't feel like I was enjoying Lake Atitlán. It felt like I was somewhere that had been constructed artificially by Westerners because they found this amazing, natural, beautiful spot and wanted to turn it into something that suited them rather than enjoying the natural beauty that was already there. Yeah, I think that's my kind of takeaway about Lake Atitlán. Beautiful lake, wonderful little thing where you can sort of take the boat to different towns around the lake, but I think it has to change. I think the people, the Westerners living there or working there, have got to start being more mindful of the locals. The lady who did my wax, she was talking about how it's more noisy than it used to be because people are out partying at night. Even in sort of the areas that are spiritual, there seems to be some confusion among the Westerners of what they really want, what spirituality really is, and how they're using it and what they're trying to bring into their life. I'm going to make more videos about this because I've become more and more triggered by all these like yoga being commercialized and yoga becoming an aesthetic rather than a spiritual practice, which is what it is. That yoga is being led by predominantly white people now when it's actually originally a South Asian practice also bothers me. I don't hear enough people talking about it, so I thought I would. So if you do understand what I'm talking about, if this does resonate with you, please do give me a thumbs up, subscribe, because I'll be making more content like this. And hopefully this doesn't rub people up the wrong way. But what I'm looking for is for people to try to understand what I'm saying, process it, and then if you do disagree, do tell me why. Because I'm fully open to being wrong about this stuff too. So let me know. This video has gone on for quite a long time, so I'm going to stop it there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.